Welcome back to Wash Talk, everyone, the Car Wash Podcast. I'm your host, Rich DiPaolo, and joining me today we have Robert Andre, Senior Vice President of National Sales and Remodel for Sonny's The Car Wash Factory. Robert, it's always great to catch up with you, and I happy we're able to connect today.
Yes, me too, Rich. Glad to be here, and thanks for having me. I think, gosh, it's been a long time since I've done anything with you, but done a lot in the past. I mean, it's probably been as long as you've been at PC&D, I think.
Yeah, you definitely held my hand for those first few months in the car wash industry. I always get a little bit smarter about this market after speaking with you. So it has been a long time coming, and I'm glad we're able to connect on this topic. It's such an important topic nowadays in the car wash industry. We're talking today about the power and the potential of a site remodel. I know Sonny's has done some stuff around this topic in recent months, so I wanted to get you on the program and find out why operators now's a good time to remodel their sites. But before we start with that topic there, Robert, can you go into a little bit more about your professional background for those who might not be familiar, and specifically how you got started in this car wash industry?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking that, Rich. Yeah, so I got started in the car wash industry in about 1998 in the full service car wash business as a operator of a conveyorized full service car wash with one major catch. Back then, I didn't have any equipment in my car wash. We had a soap arch that would spray soap on, and a rinse arch and dryers, but all the work was done by people with wash mitts on their hands. Did that for a little bit. Then I moved on to a larger operation here in South Florida, which is where I really fell in love with the car wash industry, working for a chain called Busy Bee here in South Florida. And that was a really great experience. And then I moved on to a national chain for a little bit. And then I found my home, Rich, at Sonny's in 2006. I was brought in to help launch the Car Wash College, which was a really big deal in our industry. And I think it's helped, thousands and thousands of people get a better grip on the car wash industry and how to operate better. And so that's when I started with Sonny's in 2006, and done everything from being the president of the Car Wash College to running our nationwide distribution, which included service, sales, installation, support. And now, as you mentioned, remodel is a major focus, and that's where I'm hanging my hat and helping focus operators on how they can take sites that need a new breath brought, and what the best way to do that is.
And I know you go to all the major trade shows, and folks could certainly stop by the Sonny's booth to catch up with you there as well. So appreciate that background, Robert. I won't mention that in 1998 I was still in college, but so obviously this topic of remodel you just mentioned, is a big renewed focus nowadays for a lot of operators. Why is that today? The car wash industry, as you've been telling me for years, is rapidly evolving these days. From your perspective, what's the current wave of remodels and site upgrades? What's driving that wave?
So, well, Rich, it's no secret that our industry, it was evolving and growing at a rapid pace. Not only in new builds, you had a lot of outside interest people that came in with really big war chests, and they started not only building new sites, but they were rapidly consolidating, sites into their portfolio. So our industry went through a really substantial, growth phase. During that phase, we also had a lot of outside pressures, things like, COVID and other economic pressures that have really ratcheted up the price to build a new car wash. I mean, if you look at the last 5 years, the cost to build versus where it is today, it's tremendous. And a lot of these operators that did that rapid consolidation, now they're going back and looking at their portfolio and saying, okay, how can we increase our year over year sales? How can we maximize the assets that we currently own, and looking at reinvesting in those versus going out and in maybe building new car washes? So I think there's a huge opportunity to look at, if you've already got an existing portfolio, to look at optimizing that portfolio and how you can get the most out of it. Or if you're looking at getting in, looking at maybe a site that's a little bit, tired and worn down, that somebody else has gotten a lot of life out of, and how can you go in and acquire that for a reasonable price, and then remodel it and bring it back to its former glory, if you will.
Yeah, you wrote an article for us a few years back, aptly named "How to Remodel a Car Wash." It was a few years back, and it kind of lists all the do's and don'ts of what you should consider during a remodel. Certainly, folks can go to carwash.com if they're interested in checking out that article. But in that article, Robert, you mentioned there's also a business case to remodeling a site, right? I think you mentioned in that article the fast food industry has done some research that's seen an uptick in revenue after a remodel. So it's not only for a pleasantly looking site, but there's also a
Right.
business case for it. What also strikes me, Robert, is these are high use, special use facilities. And so inside the tunnel, there's what we call the car wash environment. It's a wet environment. There's chemicals involved, but also the outside. I'm struck by how fast, um, things like a vacuum canopy could get faded out there in the elements, and certainly they start to sag and vacuum hoses. So the site needs to be kept up. The landscaping needs to be kept up. There's a lot involved in the remodel.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when upgrading equipment specifically, Robert, how can operators identify which upgrades will deliver the best ROI both operationally and financially?
Yeah, I mean, so every site's going to be unique in what it needs, but I would say that first, one thing I think everybody needs to remember, and we all need to agree on, is the reason that the car wash exists, right? What are the reason your customers come there? And that is, at the end of the day, Rich, for a clean, dry, shiny car, right? It doesn't matter how beautiful the facility is, if you're not delivering on the basic that your customer expects, that clean, dry, shiny car, everything else you do is kind of irrelevant. I always joke and say it's kind of like, putting a cherry on top of a turd. It's still a turd, right? You've got to have that ice cream sundae, and then you can put the whipped cream and the cherry to top it off. So delivering a clean car is where you've got to start, right? And then you've got to look at what can we do to enhance it from there. And I recommend that operators really focus on things that are going to help them save money. If you don't have a reclaim system, look at how you can reduce your water expenses. Look at chemical systems that are out there to help you save on chemistry. So it's not only about increasing the business, it's also about how you can save. But then when it comes to increasing the business, you really want to focus, in my opinion, on things that the customers see and touch and feel. You mentioned the vacuums, right? The vacuum area has been huge for the express car wash. It's a cornerstone of what the express is. And if you can really make that inviting and welcoming, and make sure your vacuum is working, making sure it's got the proper suction, providing your customers with things like towels and window cleaners and just a little extra. Sometimes the operators look at those as just an added cost, but those little extras, sometimes what those mean to the consumer, if you stop and talk to your customer, those little things like a towel and a window cleaner can really mean the difference in a customer's eyes between an okay visit and a great visit. So I really recommend investing in things that your customers are going to see, touch, and feel on a daily basis, and provide a better experience for them than what your competitors are.
I mean, after all, the outside of the building is kind of we've referenced it on PC&D and carwash.com. It's kind of the business card of your business. So you want to make sure it looks good, right?
100%. People talk about things like, do I need a belt? Is that going to bring more business? Do I need? And I always tell people, it's possible, but to your point, Rich, you before a customer knows what you can deliver or can't deliver, you got to get them on your property. They've got to experience it. So, and that what's going to get them there, the way the site looks, right? It's that curb appeal. It's as they're driving by, it's that, well, that place looks clean, or well, that place looks busy. It looks friendly. It looks inviting. But everything else you do, you've got to get them there first. So to your point, that is your business card, your calling card. It's what you're putting out the message to attract people to your property. And then once you get them there, you can deliver on all the other things. But you've got to have something that attracts them to that location.
For sure. So in remodel projects, how do operators balance visual improvements like we're talking about, such as facade updates, with some of the behind the scenes, so much technology is pouring into the space. How do they balance the visual appearances that customers see with the behind the scenes upgrades that impact both wash quality and throughput?
For sure, that's something that you definitely got to really think about. And so I think there's two times that you would be remodeling a car wash, or at least two that I think of. And that is, the first case I mentioned where you're buying a site, or you already have a site that's, you know, it's old, it's tired, it wasn't ran proper, it's got a, maybe a negative connotation in the community associated with it. That site, you're going to, again, want to get it back to the basics, which is delivering that clean, dry, shiny car. But on a site that's kind of had, let's call it a black eye, in order to get people to look at that, people kind of driving down the road, they've kind of got their blinders on, they don't look over here anymore. You've got to do something to make them look. And how are you going to do that? Is that visual appeal. And it's not just changing the color of the building. It's no longer putting up that sign out front that says, under new management or newly remodeled. You've got to do something kind of drastic. And what I mean by that is really change the look of the building. Maybe, adding a tower. These aren't things that have to be, crazy expensive. They're just small architectural features that you can add on to the building to help just give it a different look, a different feel, and get people's eyes kind of drawn back to it. If your car wash, already looks good, it's got the curb appeal, and maybe just the equipment is no longer performing, the costs are too high to maintain it. You're experiencing, frequent breakdowns due to the age of the equipment. Then at that point, you're going to focus more on the tunnel, the back room, the point of sale systems. And also, I recommend, even if the building is in good shape, at least giving it a fresh coat of paint, changing up the landscaping a little bit, just doing something to make it, stand out a little bit. So it just depends on the situation you're in. But you did mention earlier that the upside in, fast food restaurants like Chick-fil-A. Everybody knows Chick-fil-A is one of the top performing fast food restaurants. There's two of them, by the Sonny's factory, and both of them have been recently shut down. They were both extremely busy, but they hit their age where in the cycle Chick-fil-A says, okay, it's time to close them down and remodel. They didn't remodel because the business was struggling, because it was slow. They remodel because they know no matter how busy it is, almost every time they change and update to things, they're doing things that are increasing speed for their customers. They're doing things, they've got it down to a science, and they're remodeling on a set cycle because they know they typically see, anywhere from a 15, 20, or even more percent increase in their business after that remodel. So again, you don't always have to think of a remodel. My business is struggling. How do I improve it? Even if you're at a high performing level, there's still opportunity to look at things to increase throughput, reduce cost, increase the volume, and just create a better experience for your customers. And a lot of manufacturers that are out there, including us, we have programs where we'll come in at no charge, help you assess the site, and come up with a really good strategic plan to attack the remodel and make sure you get the most out of it. Best bang for your buck, let's say.
It's so unique in the car wash market too that word of mouth is so important that when you do something new, like add a towel exchange program or a mat cleaner or something new, that customer will spread the word to other people. Hey, have you checked out so and so's car wash? They added this new feature. So that's a powerful message too, right?
Absolutely. And always keeping it fresh, making your customers feel like, a lot of times people think as a remodel as a big thing, right? It's not always a total overhaul of the facility. Sometimes your remodel could include a signage upgrade. It could be adding something, but it's constantly keeping it fresh and new for your customers to feel like, especially today with memberships being so popular, and that's a key driver in the model, is every time the customer visits, making them feel like you're reinvesting in their experience, and giving them the tools they need to enjoy it and get the most out of it. So always just constantly keeping it fresh and adding little things even is part of a longer term plan. You have the big remodel and there's just little upgrades, no different than, sometimes people gut their whole homes. Other times you might just be upgrading your bathroom or your kitchen, or, so don't always think of it as like a whole overhaul. Sometimes you want to have a plan to do little things along the way just to keep the customers, feeling like you're reinvesting in them.
Well, I know when my wife and I are looking at a remodel or an upgrade on the house, one of the first things we talk about is costs and how much time is this going to take, and President Trump, certainly something that people have been talking a lot about this year, anticipating this bonus depreciation to come back and help car wash operators. I'm sure operators listening to this video right now are probably wondering about costs, and they have a big incentive. The one big beautiful bill, we'll call it, reinstates 100% bonus depreciation. So how does this change the financial equation for operators who might be considering a remodel today?
Well, Rich, one thing it definitely does, and how much it's going to do is going to be based on your individual tax situation. So that kind of disclaimer here, you always want to consult with your tax advisor to see how you can optimize it to the best of your abilities or advantage. But everybody is going to benefit from this if they're looking to remodel. You can write off the cost of the equipment 100% depreciation in 1 year. So on your tax bill, that's going to be a significant savings, which can reduce the cost of remodeling, and save you hundreds of thousands of dollars by being able to utilize that. So it's a really great tool. We've seen it before in the past. It is brought back. It was scheduled to start phasing out after 2025. One thing I like to tell people is we're all talking about how it's a permanent thing. As we know, anything in politics and government, I like to call it it's temporarily permanent, because you never know who the next the next person is going to come in, and they're going to reverse it or change it or eliminate it. So it is here to stay for now. So don't wait too long, and you can optimize it every year. So if you haven't done it yet in 25, there's still an opportunity to do that and get that savings off your tax bill in 25. If you've already done things earlier this year, you can go back to, I can't remember the exact date, but it is retro back to earlier in the year if you've already done some things that you can look at. And then you can also do it again in 26. It's not like you can do this 1 year and then you can't do it the next. So this is something that for now operators can use every year to look at, expanding and upgrading their portfolio and saving a significant amount in doing so. So I think this is great for operators. It'll help offset some of the high costs with interest rates and inflation and all of that. So any relief is welcome relief. But I really recommend that operators get with their tax professionals and see how they can optimize this, because it will definitely save you a substantial portion off your remodel.
And could operators use financing and depreciation strategically together to improve cash flow and make remodels more accessible?
Absolutely. There's lots of different ways to do that, but one way is, if you do get financing on the equipment and you're financing that equipment, you can still take that tax write off on that equipment 100%, even though it's financed, right? So you're kind of leveraging both sides, and again, your accounting team, your tax professionals, they can show you how to really maximize that savings. But yes, there's absolutely a potential there to be able to use that and leverage that. And we've got tools that we can come in with, like a remodel calculator, and show you estimated tax savings. We can show you estimated upside. I mean, at the end of the day, people, it's great to have the tax savings, but you got to remember it is just that, a tax savings. So if you don't have the revenue to offset it, it really is irrelevant. So you've got to make sure that you've got the revenue to offset it. But great opportunity that we've been presented with, and I really think it's going to help operators accelerate the remodel pace. And the way, Rich, that I know remodels are working, is I've seen it over the years. It's something new. We've been doing it for a long time. But B, when we have a larger client that we remodel a site for, and they were maybe a little bit hesitant at first about should I do this? After we do it, they're immediately calling us and saying, when can we do the next one? When can we do the next one? Because they're seeing that uplift. As soon as they see that uplift, they're ready to start executing on this right away.
So beyond the tax savings, remodels really can position a car wash operator to maybe increase customer volume, membership retention. We've hit all these points. Competition is increasing in this industry, so newer car washes are being built in the area. You don't want to be that old rundown car wash in an area anymore. So they really want to stay on top of these remodels. At Sunny's, how often do you recommend operators should update, refresh, or remodel sites?
Like I mentioned, you should have kind of like a long-term strategy, say, every 8, 10, 12 years to be doing a larger, remodel. But in between that time frame, you want to have a planned kind of, a lot of people don't think about it, but you buy signs for your car wash, let's say, and they look great day one. But what happens 2 years down the road to those signs? The things like Windmasters. And so have a plan, not just for that large remodel, but what are you going to do along the way in between the big thing to keep it fresh? How often your signs need to be replaced? To your point earlier about the vacuum canopies sagging and the hoses, just kind of having, even though it's not a remodel, let's call it a minor refresh, where you replace your hoses, your nozzles, if you've got air blowdowns, just constantly, you don't want your customers to ever feel like you're not reinvesting in the business, right? Members are important, but you don't want to constantly be selling memberships and not retaining, right? The big key here is retention. If you're ever going to get to high numbers, and how do you retain it? By constantly reinvesting back in the business and making your customers feel like you're investing in their experience. So if you're having, a lot of declines, look at your experience, look at the things you're offering. Are you delivering that clean, dry, shiny car? Do you have the vacuums that work? It's really, it makes me chuckle sometimes. The express car wash isn't rocket science. There's a simple formula for success. It starts with having the right sites. Um, but beyond that, we've got the model to operate these and make it successful. It's just like any good recipe, you've got to follow it. You can't add, if it says sugar, you can't substitute it with salt, right? So the recipe's there for the people that want to follow it and be successful. Yes, the industry has gotten more competitive, but I really believe as the industry's gotten more competitive, the opportunity for those willing to, reinvest in their businesses and run them right will succeed and do very well in the long run.
If I could just put you on the spot with a couple of questions, Robert. As I mentioned, you wrote that article for us. I believe it was 2018. And
Yep.
you mentioned a lot about not only what the customer could see, but remodel might also include an updated marketing plan, right? Things that you don't really uh, necessarily immediately consider. So as you've been in the market since 1998, as we learned earlier in this interview, what has changed over the decades? Is a remodel more urgent today? Let's say, is it easier with technology, or are there any obstacles operators need to consider today compared to when you first got in the industry?
I would say there's definitely some things that have changed. I'll tell you one of the key things that hasn't changed, no matter what technology. A lot of talk around AI and all this stuff, but at the key heart of any business, no matter what it is the people. And as long as I've been in the car wash industry, from back when I was washing cars on the conveyor by hand, it was people. Today, even if you're running an express and you have 2 to 3 employees there at any time, it's still people. Those are going to be the key driver. And really, it amazes me how people will go out and they will invest in building this car wash 6, 7, 8, 10+ million dollars to build these, and then they don't think about the team that's going to be there to run it. It's kind of like going out and buying the best race car you can, and then you go to Home Depot to start finding a guy to drive it, right? That's not the right thing to do. But so many people in our industry don't think about that, right? You've got this high performance machine. Make sure you've got the driver and the pit chief and all those people to back up the expense you're spending on the business. That, in my opinion, will pay off tenfold. Invest in the people, policies, procedures, training. Look at your compensation plans when you're doing the remodel. While the car wash is down, use that as an opportunity to regroup and really make sure that you've got the best staff, because that's how you're going to get the biggest return on that investment. If you build a beautiful facility and the team is not right, customers, will get turned off fast. How many restaurants can you think of that are maybe they look great, they've got great curb appeal, you go inside, they look good, but the food didn't taste that great and the server wasn't friendly? You're probably not going back there. But there's lots of restaurants I go to where the food it's decent, but the wait staff is friendly. They make me feel welcome. They, when my drink gets low, they're refilling it. Those places you go back to. So it's that human touch that is crucial in the long term success, whether it's a new build, a remodel, general business operations. Really, invest in your people. I like to say use this as an opportunity to remodel your team as well while you're remodeling the facility. If you're going to spend the money on the facility, make sure you've got the people to deliver on your vision.
You got to focus on the customer. It's all about the customer experience, right?
It's all about the customer experience. Even though we only have a small amount of people that touch the customer, and one guy that's there loading people on, whether he's there, giving you that frown, like, or if that guy's there smiling, that's going to make all the difference to the customer. That one smile, what that says to the customer. I mean, it seems so simple, but it goes such a long way. So make sure that you've got that right team to back up the expense you spend on the remodel.
For sure. Yeah, we talk about it. These are high use. Some investors might look at the car wash industry as soap and bubbles and fun, and with all this automation, it's just set it and forget it, and it has terrific margins, and it can be some of all that. It is a great industry to invest in, but it's not something that you could ignore for too long, or let your
No.
sites sit for too long. So definitely want to stay on top of that. Robert, if I could just ask you one more question before I get you off the hot seat. I know in
Yes.
that article that I keep referencing that you mentioned your own personal experience. I believe you had your own car wash site that you had just done a remodel on right before you wrote that article, and I believe you mentioned in that article that you had stayed open during that remodel. And what's the downtime look like for a remodel? If a car washer, if an operator is worried about the cost, I'm sure the other thing they're going to worry about or question is what's the downtime going to be? So, what are the pros and cons of staying open during a remodel? And can you share any of your personal experiences of any sites that you've remodeled?
Yeah, I mean that's always, the thing you've got to look at is, what's the downtime. And to your point, and I believe I touched on that article, there's two ways you can go about doing a remodel. One of them is going to be in a phased approach where you kind of, we work with you to schedule out, okay, well, our phase one is going to look like this, or phase two, phase three, phase four, where basically, we might come in, and let's say you normally close at 8 o'clock. Well, we'll come in today, you'll close at 5, a little bit early. The team will work through the night. We'll have you back open in the morning, and then the next night, we'll continue to do things. The upside with that is you still get open and you're still serving your customer base. The downside is the time and the cost to do that remodel is going to be much larger, and your customers are going to see it in kind of a phased approach, versus kind of closing it down and reopening as a totally new experience. So a lot of it depends on, Rich. If it's already a successful, thriving, business, you might want to look at more of a phased approach. If it's, a site you've acquired and really the business isn't there, it's going to be more cost effective just to shut it down for 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month, depending on what you're doing, in that remodels, their electrical upgrades, is their plumbing upgrades. A lot of times when we talk about how long a remodel takes, they're like, well, you can't install the equipment any faster. It's like, well, there's a lot more than just the equipment, right? Is there electrical that needs to be done? Is there plumbing? Is there any permits that have to be issued? If so, how long are those going to take, right? So you have to kind of factor in all the things and decide what's best for your business. But we'll work with you to help you make that decision. Is staying open, better, or shutting down? I did stay open, during mine. It did stretch the process out longer. It did cost a little bit more, but I didn't have any other sites in the area where I could send my customers to. If you have another site in the area, even if it's 5, 10, miles away or whatever, where you can redirect the customers, I'd rather just shut down. If you don't, then you've got to consider, the other option. If you do want to shut down and you're worried about your membership base, we work with you to create, a marketing plan. So, before you shut down, maybe 60 days out, you're already handing out flyers to your customers, letting them know that you're going to be down, letting them know why you're going to be down. We're improving the facility for your benefit. Here's what we're adding. Here's what we're changing. Kind of let them know so people aren't surprised when they show up and the business is closed. So there's ways that our team will work with you to help you define the best practice for your operation. And the car wash I had, Rich, it was a great location. We remodeled it; was highly successful, and that rapid consolidation that we're talking about, is how we got rid of the car wash we had. We were able to sell it for a premium, and decided that it was an opportunity we could not pass up.
I'm sure that premium was got by maybe some of the remodel touches that you did. Certainly made it look it's best to prepare it for a sale. It's another thing operators should consider now if they're getting prepared to sell their business, which a lot of operators do these days. Maybe a refresh or a remodel wouldn't be a bad idea to get the highest multiple tenant, right?
Absolutely. A lot of the buyers today, Rich, are I don't want to say gotten smarter. They are more savvy. They might have been burned, but for a while, people were buying washes strictly off numbers that they saw on a sheet of paper, and they really weren't going in and inventorying all the equipment and thoroughly checking over the times. Yes, the numbers matter, right? You've got to have the numbers, but the buyers are doing a lot more due diligence. They're going out, they're assessing the condition of the equipment, they're assessing the condition of the landscaping. They're looking at all of these things now. So if you are thinking about a sale, again, you don't have to do a huge remodel, but improving those things to go along with your numbers will help you do better in the transaction process for sure.
Well, I know this has been a big topic over at your company, Sonny's, this year. This topic of remodeling and obviously we mentioned a lot of reasons why operators would benefit these days outside of cost savings and financial reasons, but doing the right thing in the community and building a nice, beautiful building also doesn't hurt your standing with customers and members either. So appreciate you taking some
Absolutely.
time today, Robert. It's always great to catch up with you, and thank you for doing this interview with carwash.com.
Thanks for having me, Rich, and I appreciate it. If anybody needs any help with any remodels, we're here. And thanks again, Rich. And I enjoyed it, and look forward to being back again in the future.